Hey guys, welcome to the Touchdown Table. This is our second video, and for this video, we are just going to get right into it, going mainly focusing on the draft. So we're going to go right through, we're each going to say who we think the biggest steal of the draft was, and then we're going to go through again and say who we think the biggest reach of the draft was, and then we've got some recent NFL news for you. So Tyler, get us started.
This was a tough one for me. It was between the guy I'm going to pick and Josh Allen. I ultimately went with the guy I'm going to pick, obviously. And the guy I'm picking is Ed Oliver from Houston. Definitely one of the best pass rushers out of the draft. He has extreme power at the line of scrimmage, can knock through people very easily. And even with that, he has great athleticism and speed. I don't know, I forgot what the exact number he ran at his 40, but at his pro day, it was even better than his draft, and both were really good. A lot of people had him going to the Raiders at 4. He ended up going at 9 to the Bills, I believe. So
He did.
that's a huge steal for the Bills at that point, who already have a great defense.
And I'd just like to mention how much he loves him. He has a picture of him up on the screen. He's
Oh,
not
yeah.
looking at any. He's not looking at any stats or anything.
Yeah.
He's just looking at a
Yeah.
straight picture.
No
so.
stats, just a picture. Okay. All right, so Tyler says Ed Oliver for his steal of the draft. I'm going to go on the offensive side, and I'm going to go with the quarterback position. I'm going to go with Dwayne Haskins as the biggest steal of the draft. And this is mainly because of how far he fell. He fell past the Giants. He fell past the Broncos and the Dolphins and a lot of teams that we thought might be taking a quarterback, which some did take a quarterback, but not who we thought it would be and who I thought it should be in Dwayne Haskins. There was talk that the Redskins would have to trade up into maybe the top 5 to get him, and he came to them at 15, which is almost halfway through the first round. I mean, I don't really need to overanalyze it. This is just a guy that I feel is the best quarterback of the draft, and that's how I've always felt throughout the entire pre-draft prospect. I love his arm strength, and I love his accuracy, and, you know, I was just very surprised at how far he fell, and I really don't get why some teams that had the opportunity to take him didn't take him. Dwayne Haskins is a very big steal, easily the steal of the draft, and will have a great season in Washington. Jordan, how about you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree with both those picks. They're both very good picks. Now I'm going to go back to the other one that Tyler did not say, and that's Josh Allen. Now the reason I can say Josh Allen is because Josh Allen is such a fast player and such a good player that any of the teams before, all the teams 1 through 6 could have taken him and been very content with it. But then what happened was the Giants. I personally thought the Giants were going to take Josh Allen. A lot of people, that's what everyone was thinking. They were thinking Josh Allen or quarterback, and if they were thinking quarterback, they definitely weren't thinking Daniel Jones. But so they eventually took Daniel Jones. Now, of course, one pick later was when Josh Allen was picked up. But picking up Josh Allen on such a good defense is going to make that team so much better, and that's why he just fell too far down. I think he has such a great talent. He has great speed. He's like all around great player. Can do almost everything. So I feel like that kind of talent deserved to go earlier, and the fact that he fell makes him be my pick.
Yeah, that's a good pick, Jordan. Like I said, I was going to go that direction, but I decided to go Ed Oliver because he fell a little bit farther down the board.
That makes sense.
So now we're doing what is it?
The biggest
Steal.
reach.
The biggest
Reach, so
kind of
the opposite of a
Yeah.
steal.
So we're doing the biggest reaches here. Mine, I don't know if you guys can pick the same one, but I'm going 4th overall for the Raiders. I talked about it earlier when I was talking about the biggest steal, how the Raiders could have got Ed Oliver at 4, but instead they decided to go Cleveland Farrell at 4. And don't get me wrong, Cleveland Farrell's a good player, and Mike Mack knows what he's doing, obviously, all those years that he's been part of the NFL draft. There's no doubt that he knows what he's doing. It took me a while to learn how to pronounce his name, but now I got it down. Cleveland Farrell, a good
There you
player.
go.
I would say maybe 15 to 20 range. He's got good athleticism, obviously a first-round prospect, but I don't think he deserved to go 4th overall. But I hope Mike Mayock and Cleveland Farrell can prove me wrong in Oakland. And yeah, we'll see.
All right, so from
Can I just say something?
yeah, go ahead.
So, I like that pick. It's also one that I was thinking of, but just to play devil's advocate a little bit here, let's say Mike Mayock was not hired by the Raiders,
Ooh,
and he has a mock draft where Cleveland Farrell is picked by the Raiders. Do you think that a lot of people would jump on board with that? 'Cause that's a very big possibility.
I mean, I do, but I've also, this is personally my opinion and not based on what Mike Mayock says, and what I've seen from Cleveland Farrell, what I've watched, I still believe that he's in the 15, he should have gone in the 15 to 20 range. A great player. Could have now being a Hall of Famer, we'll see, but in my opinion, I don't think so. He'll be a solid player, but not deserving to go fourth overall.
Well, however well he plays, that's a good pick for at least the moment right now, as of someone who was picked too early per se.
I like the devil's advocate there. Hopefully we'll see some more of that. So, for my biggest reach of the draft, I'm going to go with the offensive line position. I'm going to go with Chris Lindstrom. He went to the Falcons at 14, the guard out of Boston College. Look, I'm not really so much against the Falcons taking an offensive lineman. With this pick, I thought they were going to go offensive line or secondary, maybe defensive line, depending on who are available.
Defensive tackle.
Yeah, defensive tackle would definitely be an option there too. This, look, Chris Lindstrom is by no means a bad player, but I didn't really have a first-round grade on him. And me personally, I think the offensive linemen in this draft were kind of drafted out of order when it comes to skill, in my opinion. I mean, I think Jonah Williams should have been the first offensive lineman taken, which he was, but after that, I thought it was really backwards. I don't think Jawan Taylor should have fallen as far as he did. The same could be said with Cody Ford and Dalton Reisner, all who I had going in the first round. So
Andre Dillard could have been taken there too. Really
I thought so all those guys I just named and Dillard, I think would have been better options there for Atlanta. Or if you want, go defense. Some guys that were available. You could have taken Brian Burns or Dexter Lawrence or Jeffrey Simmons. There was just too much talent available for you to reach as far as you did. So it's not so much against them taking offensive line this high. It's just I think there were better offensive linemen available, and that's why this is a big reach.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do think it's kind of a reach, but they were kind of. I think when they were going for that pick, they have decent offensive tackles already. They were trying to go for the offensive guard position, and in that way, in that perspective, Chris Lindstrom was the best possible scenario. But they could easily take an offensive tackle that can switch to an offensive guard and play a lot better, like someone like Dalton Reisner, even who went later on, or just a bunch of other linemen that are in the draft.
Well, even if you're thinking more of the interior offensive line position, I would have taken Garrett Bradbury over Chris Lindstrom.
That's a good point.
So you do bring up a good point there. Maybe they know what they're doing. Maybe they're going to prove me wrong, but I have my doubts right now.
It
Jordan,
seemed
what
like
about you?
throughout the whole draft there was a lot of times where some linemen were taken earlier than a lot of people thought, especially through the first and second round.
Yeah, either way, you can't really deny now that the Falcons are going to have a great offensive line. Obviously, they drafted two offensive linemen in the first round, so they're just going to improve that more. Matt Ryan hopefully will stay undirty and dry, I guess.
Undirty.
In the pocket.
Yeah.
So, I hope
Undirty,
there for
fellas.
him.
He just said undirty.
All right, now for my reach. Again, I agree with both those picks. I think they're both pretty good picks. But I'm going to do probably the obvious one here, and that's Daniel Jones. Now, obviously, the Giants took Daniel Jones at 6. The picks before were Kyler Murray, Nick Bosa, Quinnen Williams, Cleveland Farrell, and Devin White. So they had a lot of options left. They had Josh Allen, of course. I mean, this is kind of what I'm talking about last time. They had Josh Allen, they had Haskins, they had any other. There's still decent defensive players there. They could have really gone anything there, and they chose to take Daniel Jones. Now, Daniel Jones, in a lot of people's opinion, was not a first-round quarterback, and he just. Now, there were better quarterbacks on the board. The number one off at that point was Kyler Murray, and people have their doubts about him and whatnot. But anyway, so this is a good reach for me because at 6, that's a long way to reach for someone, and they could have even waited for their next pick, which I believe was 17, to give Daniel Jones if they really wanted to. Now I know that there were some rumors that the Redskins were really into Daniel Jones and whatnot, but the Redskins ended up picking Dwayne Haskins anyways. So that would be interesting to see how that would have played out. But I think they reached too far, and they could have got a much better player to help out. Let's say Josh Allen. Their defense needs a little bit of help, and that's they have Saquon now, so the offense is going to get better. Obviously, they lost Odell, but I think they need to work on their defense to get their offense to do a little better. So that's why I think they reached out.
Okay, so I have a quick question for you. So you're the Giants. So I agree that was a reach, but I just want to ask you. So would you rather have Daniel Jones at 6 and get Dexter Lawrence at 17, which they did, or get Josh Allen at 6, but then get Drew Lock at 17, or draft a quarterback later?
Well, I think the thing I was arguing was that Daniel Jones would be open at 17.
So you don't think the Redskins would have taken him at 15? You
I
think
don't
they would have
think they
taken
would've.
Haskins anyway?
I think if Haskins fell to them, they would take him for
All right.
sure.
One thing I'd like to add to that, I figured this out actually post draft, but before like a couple days or like a week before the draft, the Giants were really hyping up Daniel Jones in New York. It was, especially in New York, a lot of people knew it, and it kind of got to the point where it was really stupid for them because people figured they're drafting Daniel Jones, and in teams that they were like, we want Daniel Jones, like that badly, they could have traded up to get him or just stayed where they are, but that kind of forced the Giants to pick him at 6 overall instead of 17 overall. And if they hid it, maybe teams wouldn't. If they hid that they were trying to pick him, maybe teams wouldn't have picked on, like, hey, the Giants really like him. Maybe he's a better quarterback than we think, and then try and pick him in their spots.
And this is a quick question here. So, obviously, right now we have the quarterback battle, Daniel Jones and Eli Manning. So, who do you guys think is going to start? Well, actually, no, that's not a good question because it's actually they know Eli Manning is going to start. But who do you think that Daniel Jones is going to play the rest of the season? Because there was a quote from, I don't remember, it might have been Pat Shermer. I think it was Pat Shermer.
Okay.
And he said that Daniel Jones is ready to play week 1 and he's not going to, at least as of this moment. But he said he is ready to play. So do you think Daniel Jones is going to step in, and how good do you think he's going to be?
I think it might be like a Patrick Mahomes type of thing where Eli Manning has 1, maybe even 2 years as the Giants quarterback, but if it does get to the point where Eli Manning is not playing good enough, even this year, I wouldn't be surprised, or if he gets injured, obviously, wouldn't be surprised to see Daniel Jones step onto the field and play. I don't know how good the play would be, but I would say maybe towards the end of this year or next year sometime.
Yeah, I think he will see a decent amount of action this year. And I really think Eli Manning is kind of going to be on a shorter leash this year. You know, I think he'll start the first few games, but then I think if, say, around week 8, week 7, they're not performing as they want to, and there's a game where he throws 3-4 picks, like, I think Daniel Jones is going to step in. I don't think they're going to essentially redshirt Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones is going to be available for them, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets in there by week 10, starting a game.
So you're kind of comparing this to what the Bears did with Mike Glennon and Mitchell Trubisky, and then they put him in?
I don't know if it's going to be after 4 games, but around kind of the same idea.
Yeah.
All right, so last time at the end of the episode or video, I said that we're going to talk about some news that's going on. During this past week, there's been a lot of news about the Texans GM. Ryan's going to explain it here. We're just going to talk about it for a little bit.
Yeah, so this is something that's very close to home for me because if you don't remember from the first video, I'm a Texans fan. I'll be wearing a Texans shirt every video. So what happened? The Houston Texans fired their general manager, Brian Gaine, after just a little over a year of holding the position. This was his second draft. And after they fired him, obviously they have a GM opening. So, you know what? They say, okay, let's try and get this guy named Nick Caserio. I think he's the director of player personnel for the Patriots, I believe. I think he's about 43 years old.
And they tried to get him last year,
Yeah.
too, and the Patriots said, no, you're not getting him.
Yeah, they denied him. They didn't even let him interview him.
Yeah.
So this year, apparently, the Patriots accused the Texans of tampering, which is kind of like illegally talking to him, I guess you could say, about filling the GM position. And then they were going to get, like, the NFL was going to investigate and all that. And then it was just kind of strange, like, at the same time, the Texans were like, oh, we're not going to pursue him. And then the Patriots dropped their charges. And then it's like the whole thing never happened. So it's really just an interesting situation. And for me as a Texans fan, I'm just kind of more like, why now? Like, why would you do this after the draft? Because all these guys that are on your team now are because of Brian Gaine. And now essentially the reason they're there is wrong. So then maybe did he have beef with Bill O'Brien? Like, I'm just really confused at the timing.
Well, I think they did this because of what happened with Mike McCagnon and the Jets, and they figured, hey, you know what? There's actually a lot of good
Can you explain
GM.
what happened there?
Yeah.
So with Mike McCagnon and the Jets, it's kind of the same thing. What he just said. They waited until after the draft to fire Mike McCagnon, and he had already done so much with the organization. There were rumors that he was going to be fired before, but they waited until after the draft, and now they got their fresh pick of the up-and-coming GMs that will be next year. I think the Texans might have been like, hey, that's not that bad of an idea. You have a bunch of candidates that you can go out and get right now that they like better than Brian Gaines. And I think that's what they decided to do
But
there.
I think there's a difference between those two scenarios. The reason why I think the Texans might have fired their GM is because maybe they didn't like the way he drafted. Of course, they took Titus Howard, a bit of a reach there in a lot of people's eyes. They had better people open, at least for most people's rankings at that point. So it's kind of confusing on that. I think the reasons why the Jets fired their GM is because of accusations like Le'Veon Bell that the team did not necessarily agree with, and the amount of money that they paid him, and such things like that. So I think there's a little bit of difference, but I like the comparison there.
I also think that's interesting. It kind of flips. Now the Patriots are accusing the Texans
Yeah.
of cheating, and the Patriots are kind of known to be the team that cheats. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that they do cheat, but they're known to be cheaters, and now they're trying to flip the switch and pin it on the Texans.
Yeah, and just as you talked about with the draft, I just want to highlight on that because I very passionately felt that the Texans should have traded up in the draft. And I felt this before the draft, and especially during the draft when the offensive linemen started free falling. I just don't know why they didn't. I mean, like, you look at, like, I saw mock drafts the day of the draft that had them trading into the top 10, but I don't even know if you need to go that far. Just, like, get a guy like Andre Dillard or Jonah Williams. Like, I'm really disappointed that it was right there for them, and it got to a point where you probably only have to give up your first-round pick, which you have, and then one of your 2 second-round picks just to move up a few spots to make sure you get a first-round caliber offensive lineman, which I don't believe Titus Howard is. I had him going in the 3rd round, so yeah, I had him actually going to the Bears, 87th overall. So I just really think that for me as a Texans fan to kind of decide on where I stand on it, I kind of have to know what someone else would have done in the draft. Because if someone else would have traded up, then I am for it. If they would have done the same thing, then I'm still confused.
Especially because the Eagles traded down from 25 to 22 to take
That's true.
That's what I meant, yeah. Traded up from 25 to 22 to take Andre Dillard, which was set to be who the Texans were going to take.
Yeah.
They could have took that aggressive move down just one spot once there was a team looking for trades in that situation, or they could have moved before that point. So just interesting stuff by the Texans first round. I think the Texans draft got better throughout the next few rounds, but it was just controversy in the first round.
I don't think you fire your GM
Oh, I agree with you.
for your draft before the players can even play, because you
Yeah.
don't know how good Titus Howard is gonna be. Even though people say he's a bust, you don't know until he steps out on the field. So I don't think that's the reason that they fired him.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think they did have some good draft picks. I liked their 2nd-round picks. I liked the Lonnie Johnson pick and the Max Sharping picks in the 2nd round. And who I really liked, who I think was probably their biggest steal of the draft for the Texans, Charles Omenihu, and I think that's how you say it. Got to double check that one. Charles Omenihu, the defensive end out of Texas, in the 5th round. I thought that was a good pick, and many had him going as high as the 3rd round. So it wasn't all bad. It's just kind of a confusing situation.
All right, so I think this video is kind of getting long. So
Yeah.
so
We'll wrap it
we're
up.
probably gonna wrap it up here. Once again, thanks for watching. I didn't say this last time, but I'm gonna be one of those normal YouTubers. Please like the video, subscribe,
There you
and
go.
yeah, just continue to enjoy videos. Thanks for stopping by. And
Turn
we'll
post notifications on, baby.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
see you guys later.